May 9, 1943, 1400 hours. The Cap Bon Peninsula, Tunisia. The heat is a physical weight, pressing down on the cracked earth until the horizon shimmers like a mirage. The air doesn't smell like the Mediterranean. It smells of cordite, burning rubber, and the sour metallic stench of 50,000 unwashed men. Obergefreiter Hans Weber sits on a discarded jerrycan, his head in his hands. His uniform, once the crisp tropical olive of the vaunted Afrika Korps, is now a rag of bleached canvas, stained with oil and sweat. Around him, the remnants of Rommel's legendary army are doing something they were promised they would never do. They are smashing their rifles against rocks. They are burying their iron crosses in the sand. They are waiting to die. For us, the war is over, a sergeant mutters nearby, his lips cracked and bleeding from dehydration. Now the Americans come, and they will leave us to rot. The propaganda back home had been clear. The Americans were gangsters. Cowboys? They were weak in spirit but brutal in conduct. The German soldiers believed that if they weren't executed on the spot, they would be starved just as they were starving now. Weber hadn't eaten a full meal in 3 days. The German supply lines had been strangled by the Royal Navy and American bombers months ago. Their last ration was a moldy heel of Kammersbrot, the dense, dark rye bread extended with sawdust to make it last, and a tin of watery Italian stew that smelled of wet dog. Then the dust cloud appears. It isn't a storm. It is a column of vehicles so long the rear is lost in the haze. Jeeps, deuce and a halves, Shermans, half-tracks. Weber stands, his legs shaky. He expects the rattle of machine gun fire. Instead, he hears the grinding of gears and the casual shouting of GIs. The Americans don't look like the monsters Goebbels described. They look healthy. They look bored. And most terrifying of all, they are chewing gum. The surrender is chaotic but bloodless. The Germans are herded not into pits, but onto transport trucks. It lands with a clatter near Weber's boot, a tin can. Weber picks it up, his hands trembling. Ration, meat and vegetable hash. He looks at the American. The corporal just shrugs and lights a cigarette. Weber tears the key off the bottom and winds the tin open. The smell hits him instantly: salt, fat, beef. Real beef. He digs his dirty fingers into the can and shoves the cold hash into his mouth. The flavor is overwhelming. It's too rich. His stomach cramps immediately, unused to such density, but he keeps eating. He looks around. The other men are weeping as they eat. But this is just the appetizer. The real psychological blow is yet to come. 3 weeks later, Weber finds himself in the hold of a Liberty ship crossing the Atlantic. The fear has returned. They are being taken to America, to the land of the gangsters. Surely, now that they are away from the front lines, the abuse will begin. The logistics of feeding thousands of prisoners on a ship must be impossible. The loudspeaker crackles. Mess call. Deck 4. Move out. They shuffle in a line, heads down, expecting a ladle of gruel. As they enter the galley, the humidity rises, carrying a scent that stops Weber in his tracks. It smells like a bakery in Munich before the war. He steps up to the serving line. An American cook, wearing a pristine white apron, slaps a metal tray onto the rail. Item 1. A slab of meatloaf, thick and dripping with gravy. Item 2. A scoop of mashed potatoes, white and fluffy, with a pat of butter melting on top. Item 3. Green beans that are actually green, not gray. Item 4. 2 slices of bread. Weber stares at the bread. It isn't dark. It isn't hard. It is shocking, blindingly white. It looks like cake. He touches it. It's soft as a cloud. He looks up at the cook, confused. Is this a trick? Is this the last meal before the firing squad? Move it along, Fritz, the cook grunts, dropping an orange, a whole fresh orange, onto the tray. Weber stumbles to a table and sits. He picks up the white bread. He takes a bite. It dissolves in his mouth, sweet and refined. There is no sawdust, no filler. Across the table, a Feldwebel, a hardened veteran who survived the Russian front, is staring at his tray. He isn't eating. He is simply staring at the butter melting into the potatoes. "We have lost," the Feldwebel whispers, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a sudden, crushing realization. "What do you mean?" Weber asks, his mouth full of meatloaf. The Feldwebel points a calloused finger at the tray. "You know what it takes to ship fresh oranges across an ocean during a submarine war? Do you know what it costs to feed prisoners better than our general staff eats in Berlin?" He looks up at Weber, tears streaming down his face. "They aren't just feeding us, Weber. They are showing off. If they have enough fuel and ships to bring this luxury to the enemy, then what do you think they are bringing to their own troops?" Weber looks down at the white bread. For the first time, he understands. The war wasn't decided by bullets or panzers. It was decided by the fact that the Americans could treat a prisoner of war to a Sunday dinner on a Wednesday in the middle of the Atlantic. But the true shock awaits them on dry land. Because if the food on the ship was impressive, what they are about to see in the American heartland will shatter their reality completely. June 14, 1943. Newport News, Virginia. 900 hours. The gangplank lowers with a heavy metallic thud. Hans Weber squints against the morning sun, bracing himself for the sight of devastation. For years, the German newsreels Die Deutsche Wochenschau had played grainy footage of U-boats sinking, American tankers and long-range bombers allegedly turning the East Coast into a burning wasteland. Weber expects to see cratered docks, hollowed-out warehouses, and civilians picking through rubble, just like in Hamburg or Cologne. He steps onto the pier. He stops. The line of prisoners behind him bumps into his back, but he doesn't move. There are no craters. There is no rubble. To his left, a row of massive cranes is loading crate after crate onto fresh Liberty ships. To his right, a pristine city skyline rises, the windows gleaming, not boarded up. There are cars driving along the coastal road, civilian cars, burning precious gasoline as if it were water. "It's a lie," a young private whispers, his eyes wide. Goebbels lead. They haven't been touched. The guards hustle them onto a train. But this isn't the cattle car transport Weber knows from the Eastern Front, cold, wooden boxes smelling of manure and fear. These are Pullman passenger cars, cushioned seats, glass windows. As the train lurches forward, beginning the long journey into the American interior, the prisoners press their faces against the glass. They are heading west, and for the next 48 hours, the sheer scale of the United States begins to crush their morale more effectively than any artillery barrage. Hour after hour, they roll past fields of corn and wheat that stretch to the horizon. In Germany, every square inch of soil is being frantically tilled by women and children to stave off famine. Here, massive mechanical harvesters sit idle in the fields, waiting for the season. Then comes lunch. A black porter moves down the aisle pushing a cart. He isn't barking orders. He hands out box meals to the prisoners. Weber opens his box. Fried chicken, cold, crisp, battered. Potato salad, heavy with mayonnaise and egg. Coffee. Real bean coffee, not the ersatz chicory sludge they drank in Tunisia. But it's the smell of the coffee that breaks the man across from Weber, a Luftwaffe pilot named Kurt. Kurt had been shot down over the desert, arrogant and sure of ultimate victory. Now, holding a paper cup of steaming coffee, he looks out the window at a passing town. He sees a housewife hanging laundry in a backyard, a dog running through green grass, a bicycle leaning against a white fence. "Look at them," Kurt says, his voice hollow. "They don't even know there's a war on." It is a terrifying epiphany. In Germany, the war is the air you breathe. It is the siren at night, the empty pantry, the black morning bands on sleeves. Here, the war is a newspaper headline. It is an annoyance. Weber bites into the chicken. The grease coats his tongue. It's delicious, but it tastes like defeat. The train rolls through a small station in Ohio. On the platform, a group of American teenagers is laughing, drinking Coca-Cola from glass bottles. They wave at the train, not knowing or perhaps not caring that it is filled with the enemy. The Feldwebel from the ship leans over to Weber. He holds up a piece of white bread from his lunchbox. Do you know why we lost, Weber? Weber shakes his head. Logistics, the Feldwebel says, tearing the bread in half. We have better tanks. We have better machine guns. Our soldiers are disciplined. But the Americans? They can put a piece of fried chicken in a box and ship it across a continent on a cushioned train seat for a prisoner. He points out the window at a massive factory complex rolling by, smoke billowing from 100 stacks. They are drowning us in steel and calories, and we are trying to stop the tide with a teaspoon. The train slows as evening falls. They are approaching their final destination, a camp in the deep south. Weber expects the luxury to end here. A prison camp is still a prison camp. There will be barbed wire. There will be watchtowers. There will be hard labor. But as the gates of the camp come into view, Weber sees something that makes him rub his eyes in disbelief. Beyond the wire, inside the prisoner compound, there is a building. It has a sign painted on the wood. It's not a guard tower. It's not a punishment block. The sign reads, Canteen, and walking out of it, a German prisoner is holding a bottle of beer and a pack of cigarettes. Weber feels the world tilt. They aren't just being fed. They are being paid. July 4th, 1943. Camp Ruston, Louisiana. 1,800 hours. The sound is unmistakable. Ka-ching. It is the mechanical ring of a cash register. Hans Weber stands in the middle of the camp exchange, clutching a booklet of paper coupons in his sweaty hand. He feels like he has stepped through a looking glass. Back in Tunisia, a bar of chocolate was currency. You could trade it for a watch, a pair of boots, maybe even your life. Here, in the prison canteen, there are stacks of Hershey bars arranged in a pyramid. There are packs of Lucky Strike cigarettes. There are razors, soap that smells like lavender, and stationery. And in the corner, cooling in a metal tub filled with ice, beer. 80 cents a day, a prisoner next to him says, lighting a fresh cigarette. That's what they pay us to pick their cotton or fix their roads. 80 cents. In coupons. Weber looks at the coupons. The Americans are paying them to work. In the Reich, forced laborers from the East were worked until they dropped, fed only enough to keep the machine running. Here, the Americans adhere so strictly to the Geneva Convention that it feels like a mockery. Weber steps up to the counter. He buys a bottle of beer and a bar of chocolate. He expects the American clerk to sneer at him. The clerk just takes the coupon and yawns. Weber walks out into the warm Louisiana evening. He sits on the steps of his barracks, peels the foil off the chocolate, and takes a bite. The sugar rush is dizzying. He washes it down with cold beer. Because if I told her the truth, that I am throwing away roast beef while she boils potato peels to make soup, she would hate me. And she would realize that all the suffering, all the sacrifice, it was for nothing. We are fighting a country that treats its prisoners better than we treat our own people. Weber lies back on his pillow. He listens to the crickets chirping outside in the freedom of the American night. He realizes then that the Americans haven't just captured his body. By filling his stomach, they have destroyed his ideology. But the war isn't over yet. And as news from Europe begins to trickle into the camp news of D-Day and the fall of Berlin, Weber and his comrades face a new terror. They are going to have to go back. They are going to have to leave the land of milk and honey and return to the rubble. And they will have to look their starving families in the eye and explain why they look so healthy. March 12, 1946. Pier 88, New York City. The party is over. Hans Weber stands on the deck of a transport ship, watching the Statue of Liberty fade into the mist. He is wearing a fresh set of clothes given to him by the U.S. Army, a heavy wool coat, sturdy leather boots, and a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Inside that bag, buried deep within socks and underwear, is his contraband. 3 bars of chocolate, 2 pounds of coffee beans, 4 packs of cigarettes. He guards the bag like it contains gold bullion, because in the world he is returning to, it does. The journey back is somber. There is no bravado among the men now. The Third Reich is dead. Hitler is dead. The cities they grew up in, Berlin, Dresden, Cologne, are now just coordinates on a map of rubble. As the ship docks in Le Havre, France, and the men are transferred to trains bound for the German border, the reality hits them. The windows of the train are no longer the clean glass of the American Pullman cars. They are cracked, taped over, or missing entirely. The landscape outside is gray, not the golden wheat of Kansas or the green cotton of Louisiana. It is a moonscape of craters, twisted steel, and mud. The arrival, Hamburg, May 1946. Weber steps off the train at what remains of the Hamburg Hauptbahnhof. The roof is gone, the steel girders twisted like pretzels against the sky. He walks through the streets. He sees the Trümmerfrauen, the rubble women, forming human chains to clear bricks by hand. They are gray, shapeless figures wrapped in rags, their faces masked by dust. Weber catches his reflection in a surviving shop window. He stops. The man in the glass looks like a movie star. His cheeks are full and rosy from 3 years of American beef and milk. His shoulders are broad, his muscles developed from farm labor that was hard, but fueled by 4,000 calories a day. He looks healthy. He looks alive. He turns away from the reflection, ashamed. He pulls his coat collar up, trying to hide his vitality. In a city of skeletons, a healthy man looks like a monster. He reaches his neighborhood. The apartment block is gone, replaced by a mound of bricks. But the cellar entrance is cleared. A handwritten sign points down, Weber. He descends the stairs. The air smells of mold and boiled cabbage. He pushes open the door. His mother is sitting at a wooden table, mending a sock by the light of a single candle. She looks up. For a moment, she doesn't recognize him. She sees a giant, a well-fed stranger filling the doorway. Hans? Her voice is a dry rasp. She stands, but she is frail. She has aged 20 years in the 3 he has been away. Her skin is translucent, pulled tight over her cheekbones. Her hands are shaking. Weber drops his bag and rushes to her. He hugs her, but he is afraid to squeeze too hard. She feels like a bird, fragile, brittle bones under a thin layer of wool. "You are so big," she whispers, touching his face. "You look so strong." The guilt hits Weber like a physical blow. While she was cowering in cellars, listening to the world end, eating soup made from grass and potato peels, he was drinking beer in Louisiana. He was throwing roast beef into garbage cans. He pulls away, frantic. He drags his duffel bag onto the table and rips it open. "Moody, look," he says, his voice cracking. He pulls out the coffee, the chocolate, the cigarettes. She stares at the items. She reaches out and touches the chocolate bar, her fingers trembling. She hasn't seen real chocolate since 1941. "Coffee," she breathes, bringing the bag to her nose. The smell fills the damp cellar, a scent of a lost world, of peace, of civilization. She begins to weep. Not out of happiness, but out of sheer, overwhelming exhaustion. Weber sits across from her. He takes her hand. "I'm sorry," he says. "I'm so sorry I ate." It is a sentence that makes no sense in any other context, but here, in the ruins of the Thousand-Year Reich, it is the only truth that matters. The final verdict months later, Weber meets the Feldwebel one last time. They are working on a reconstruction crew, clearing debris near the harbor. They take a break, sitting on a pile of bricks. The Feldwebel lights an American cigarette, one of the last from his stash. "You know," the Feldwebel says, exhaling smoke into the gray sky, "they say history is written by the victors." "Yes," Weber replies. "But the war wasn't won by the generals," the Feldwebel continues. "It wasn't won by strategy or bravery. We had plenty of that." He kicks a piece of rusted metal. "It was won by the lunchbox. It was won by the chocolate bar. It was won by the country that could afford to throw away the crust of a sandwich." Weber nods. He thinks back to the white bread on the Liberty ship. Soft, sweet, and pure. The German war machine was built on hate, on iron, on the will to conquer. But it was dismantled, piece by piece, by the sheer, crushing weight of American logistics. They didn't just outfight the Wehrmacht. They outproduced them, outshipped them, and ultimately, they outfought them. Weber stands up and dusts off his hands. The city will take decades to rebuild. But he is alive. And he knows, with absolute certainty, that he will never ever look at a piece of bread the same way again.